it's the same thing that everybody is chasing conference football money. That's what it is.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to the Odd Coaches Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Keith Adams, and with me today are my cavalcade of stars, Captain for Life, Will Cotton. How are you, sir?
Doing great. How's it going, everybody?
My favorite team leader, Mike King, Mr. King.
How's it going?
And, of course, our favorite administrator, Robert Abney, has graced us with his presence. Robert, how are you today?
Living the dream, baby, every day.
On today's Throwdown Thursday editions, we're gonna talk about welcome to the conference. We've got 12 to 14 new conference members going on. We're going to talk about San Diego State trying to do the rewind. Pac-12 still not getting it right. College teams getting the IRS in their business. We shouldn't want that, as well as changes to the transfer portal and gambling in college athletics. We started the week talking off about gambling. We're going to end the week talking about gambling. But first, welcome to the conference. We have 14 teams changing conferences. Let's take a look. First, we're going to the American Conference. The Charlotte 49ers are going to the American, and they just left Conference USA. Florida Atlantic in the American, they left Conference USA. The North Texas Mean Green have left Conference USA, and they're going to the American. The Rice Owls, there's a Texas theme here. They're going to the American from Conference USA. UAB Blazers and Trent Dilfer, and you better not talk to his players, they're going to the American from Conference USA. One of my favorite teams last year, the UTSA, University of San Antonio Roadrunners, they're leaving Conference USA, going to the Atlantic. Robert, a lot of Texas flavor, talking about the American. Give me your thoughts on the new American Athletic Conference.
It sounds like it's Conference USA. I mean, I get that, you know, people are chasing. It's the same thing that everybody is chasing conference football money. That's what it is. And, you know, the schools in Texas that are not like, you know, SEC type or Big 12 type, you know, they get left with scraps. So they're just scrambling around trying to figure it out. And you can't be in the WAC, which is the other conference all the Texas schools are in, because their football is FCS and not FBS. So, I mean, geographically makes the most sense for them. That's for sure.
Okay. So, Will, I'm going to talk to you about the Big 12, sir. BYU is coming in, Brigham Young, and they were an independent last year. The Cincinnati Bearcats are leaving the American to go to the Big 12. The Houston Cougars are leaving the American to go to the Big 12. The University of Central Florida Knights, UCF, they're leaving the American to go to the Big 12. Will, tell me your thoughts on the new Big 12 conference.
They like to realign themselves. They just lose their big teams. Texas and Oklahoma are going to SEC. So they need to kind of supplement. They need
now. Remember, this year though, they're all in it together. Last year.
Oh yeah, they're getting ready, but they're getting ready for it's going to happen, and they're trying to build it up now, because when it happens and they lose that big chunk of viewership, they'll at least be able to supplement that with, you know, whatever they got with Houston and UCF and BYU, who are going to watch and things like that. But, you know, I like it. I like change, man. I like the change. I appreciate it. You know, teams trying to get better, teams thinking they're better enough to go in this division or conference, I should say. And see see where you stack up, man. And who knows what you could get. I mean, Houston, when I was growing up, was not really a great team coming up. Now it's a team that you're like, oh man, kind of every now and again, they got a really good team every now and again. BYU's always been, but every now and again, they got a really good team. So it's interesting, man. And I think NIL is just creating a lot of this, because now there's a lot of talents going to different places And universities are like, well, hold on, wait, we're getting these players now. Maybe we could go play over here. Maybe we could go and play over here. Maybe we can compete. So I love it. I love the feel. I love the vibe that guys think, and shaking them up, man. Don't keep the same stagnant stuff over and over and over. I think people will love it, or I think I
Okay.
like it. I like it.
So, Mike, I got you with Conference USA because Mike used to always help me out with some classes that had some challenges. So, Conference USA, Mike, you got Jacksonville State. They
Mhm.
left the ASUN to go to Conference USA. Liberty was an independent. Now they're in Conference USA. New Mexico State. Man, I don't know what they're doing over there, but that was a basketball thing. They're leaving being an independent to be going to Conference USA, and the Sam Houston Bearcats with a K. They're leaving the WAC, as Robert told you, and they're going to Conference USA. Mike, if you're running Conference USA, how are you feeling right now picking up this talent?
It's an interesting. I'm on their website, just kind of looking at the schools by state. You only have 2 schools that share state. They don't connect. It's just it's a weird.
It's Conference USA,
Yeah,
the entire USA.
The
Oh,
entire USA.
the whole USA, but it's only 9 states and it misses by 1 state. They're just 1 state away from connecting the whole thing. I think they need one more. That's it. They need one more.
Which state?
Who are they missing? Where are we? They're missing.
American education system.
I
Geography.
can't find. I just lost the website. Hold on.
That's
Mississippi.
okay.
They're missing.
They're missing what?
They're missing Mississippi.
Mississippi. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to continue to miss Mississippi because they got Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Alcorn State.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you go. Alcorn State,
I think that's all
the
I got.
Conference USA.
That's it.
There it
If
is.
Hey, and well,
if you could add or Mississippi College, there's something called Mississippi College.
there you go.
Add something, and then it all connects, and it makes logical sense.
All right. So I'm going back to Robert. Robert, in all of these conferences, who has the best shot at making noise in their new conference? Which team are you looking at to say, all right, they're about to do something?
So let me start with New Mexico State because I at least have a little bit of familiarity with them. They are historically terrible, but they got Jerry Kill, who used to coach
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And this past year, they won 7 games. They actually went to a bowl game and won a bowl game. So they're feeling pretty good about themselves. They wound up in CUSA because New Mexico won't support them getting into the Mountain West.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that there's a huge big brother, little brother thing going on there. So I mean, them finally getting into a conference is great for them because they were playing Liberty 3 times a year and doing all kinds of weird stuff just to try to get games. So that's one. North Texas has been on the move for a few years. They've been getting better every year. They've been getting to bowl games. They're getting bigger and better players. I think North Texas is really poised to make a move. I think that them moving to the American, that's going to be good for them.
Okay. Will, who do you think has the best shot of all of these teams and making noise in their new conference?
Man, it's for a long time I thought the Cincinnati Bearcats, man, they were really coming out in terms of a better team, but I don't know if they're going to do it. Houston's pretty good. It's kind of like just adding fodder, man. It's like, it's like when you get Chipotle, like you have a bigger burrito, but it's just rice, and there are a lot of rice.
Not burrito.
Yeah, they're not. I don't think anyone that's going to shook anything up, but if there was somebody going to do it, I guess I would have to say Houston.
Mhm.
I mean, I think Houston would be the one.
Yeah, they
to
got
come
the
out-
Dana Holbrook guy. He used to be a West Virginia coach in there.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
think they'd be that'd be a great story for them. You know, I think that'd be a good thing for them. Other thems, I could see Cincy have like a sneaky season, but Houston would probably be the one that kind of shook it up for everybody.
All right, and Mike, who's got the best shot in your opinion of making
going-
noise in their new conference?
I'm saying Houston because, I mean, if you just look in recent years, they've had coaches, like they've been able to get multiple coaches who ended up, using them as a stepping stone. But Kevin Sumlin and Tom Herman and Art Briles. So they've had coaches who have gone on to do other things, but then they replace them. So they're a good spot for coaching. They've had good players. They've had first-round draft picks. They've had top 25 teams. And the Big 12 is losing a lot of the good teams. So they could potentially step up and then do well there. Because that's part of the problem is all these teams are taking a step up in competition, but Big 12 is also losing some of the the scariest teams. So Houston could be a team that is a big threat.
Okay, and they still got some money coming in. So now let's move to San Diego State. They have announced to the Mountain West that they're not leaving, even though they said they were exploring leaving. I'm going to Robert because he's my administrator. If you're the Mountain West Conference, Robert, how are you handling this San Diego State mess? You know they want to leave, but the Pac-12 has like no deal lined up. And they're clearly trying to go, and you got a business to run. How are you handling this, sir?
Well, I think part of the reason there's some hesitation from San Diego State is that, if I'm the Mountain West, I'm saying, you know what, if you're leaving, all this money that you brought us, you ain't getting your share. I think part of it is, and it's not just them, it's the other schools that, have gone on to postseason play. I think the Mountain West is probably threatening to not give San Diego State their share of that money. And that's a lot of money. And so I think that's probably part of it, why San Diego State why there's some hesitation there. And also, if I'm the Mountain West, you're dang right I'm going to do that, because we can't plan to move forward if you are unsure about what you're doing.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't shock me if the Pac-12 does figure it out and then San Diego State is like, deuces, I'm out. But
they're going to stay the whole year, because you saw what the buyout was if they left. If they left before June 30th, it was like 16 million, and anything after June 30th is like 32 million. So I'm not thinking they're going to do anything this year.
That's
with that.
That's a lot of money.
Mm.
But that being said, they get the right deal. Won't
The
matter.
Pac-12 is not going to have that kind of money. So there's nothing. Where are they going? Amazon? There's nothing left. The
Yeah.
money's gone.
That's true. Nothing surprises me in athletics anymore. Nothing. Wouldn't
So-
shock me.
So, Mike, being my social studies teacher, and we always look for the angle, I'm putting you in charge of San Diego State, sir. How are you handling all of this? Pac-12 blew it this year, and they don't have a deal yet, so you can't go anywhere. You know you want to leave. You know you've got all the facilities. You got this, you got that. Do you say forget the Pac-12 and call the Big 12? What would you do, because you're a social studies teacher?
I mean, the more options, the better. So I'm going to call everybody. Anybody who might take me, I'm going to call and get the best offer I can. And I don't want to be kind of in limbo.
Okay. All right. With that being said, in segment 2, we're going to bring in the IRS to colleges and universities, which is the last thing they want. And we're going to tell you why they're mad at NIL. We'll get right back on the iCoaches podcast.
The high school and college academic and athletic landscape is changing. The growing number of college transfers, as well as student athletes being able to profit off the use of their name, image, and likeness, has given student athletes the freedom and power to make life-changing decisions. That is why it is important for student athletes to be properly informed throughout the decision-making process. The difference between success and failure is often measured not by yards, but by inches, and even the most successful coaches and players use outside independent consultants to help improve their decision-making, which improves their results. That is what the CKA Save Project would like to do for student athletes across the country, improve their academic and athletic results. Our academic and athletic consulting services assist student athletes with the college decision-making process. The CKA team of former high school and college coaches can provide student athletes an independent assessment of their academic and athletic skills to assist student athletes in their college decision-making process. Let the CKA team evaluate your academic and athletic ability to assist you in finding the right fit for your academic and athletic career. For more information, visit us on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org or schedule a free virtual consultation with Dr. Keith Adams by email at cka@ckasaveproject.org.
Welcome back to the iCoaches podcast. And in segment 2, we've got the IRS on line 1. So let me explain what's going on, fans. The rapidly changing landscape of nonprofit, donor-backed collectives paying college athletes to promote charities have been hit with a potential huge disruption. A recent 12-page memo from the Internal Revenue Service determined that in many cases, such collectives may not qualify as tax exempt if their main purpose is paying players instead of supporting charitable works. If the collectives aren't tax exempt, the donations they collect that are used to pay quarterbacks, basketball players, pitchers, etc., may not be deemed tax deductible, which means some of that money will dry up. So let me explain briefly, fans, the difference between for-profit and nonprofit. Some collectives are set up as for-profit entities, and that's fine, go do whatever. Open Doors, which is a company that partners with schools to help initiate, track, and monitor NIL projects, projected nearly $1.2 billion flowing through the industry. The nonprofit model was an attractive option for folks because they can get a write-off on their taxes, but these collectives may face future examination or enforcement based upon how they're already granted tax-exempt status, but they're still not doing what they believe is tax-exempt work. So Congress has been watching, and they're looking to do a limited tax deduction bill, but none of that's going to pass through. And of course, Robert, Texas will find a way. The Texas One Fund, which is a multi-pronged collective that includes Horns with Hearts, they're going to find a way to get this done because they don't care what the memo says. Money is still going to flow to college athletics. So, Will, we're going to start off with you. What does all this mean to you, man? How are we going to get through this?
With all this, man, it's going to be a lot of conversations, having money going forward and backwards. But again, they're not having any conversation about the players, the student athlete. They're not talking to them. Congress is talking above them. They're talking to the universities. The IRS is talking to the schools. They're talking to the administrators.
And that has to be publicly disclosed when you file your taxes as a nonprofit.
Exactly. Oh, for sure.
Good luck with that.
But the one person they're not talking to is the kids. I mean, or knowing the students or actually playing. It's obviously the IRS wants to get their money, wants to get their cut. That's the big reason of everything. The Congress wants to kind of say, okay, well, let's put some limitations on that. These are just things that we should have done when we enacted the NIL the first time. If you follow the other shows, please, I implore you to go to other shows that we've done. This should have been done long ago. Trying to put the monster back in the box is hard. You can't do it. And now they're just going to kick the can down the road because nobody's going to be happy with the solution that they're coming up with. Everyone's going to be like, well, I should make this money. Oh, I should get the tax exemptions. Oh, I need my cut of my tax because da 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 da. If this was all enacted, if this was already put in place before we said NIL can happen, This could not have happened, but now they're trying to put the monster in the back, and they put the monster in the box, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard, and I don't know if there's a solution right now that I can see everyone's going to be happy with.
Mike, what about you, sir? What do you think about the IRS just taking a peek around before the filings for next year?
Well, yeah, money flows. The IRS has their ear to the ground, so that's not too much of a surprise. But this is all. I mean, the NCAA has no one to blame but themselves. They should have figured this out before it exploded into what this has become. They should have just taken all the money they were making and paid a small amount, and then maybe we wouldn't get to this millions and this and that and this mess. So it's a
I
mess.
love it. I love it. Robert, provide the administrative levity that you do to this situation. What are we supposed to make of this?
I think that what we're talking about here, I'm pretty sure we call those unintended consequences.
I love this guy.
I mean, like Will said, this is all stuff that they should have thought of and planned for from the beginning. And you're right, people are going to figure out how to get themselves around it, because there's a whole I don't know if you all have noticed, but Longhorn and Aggie fans are crazy, and they're going to find a way to get their money in there. One thing that I thought was interesting, I think I saw this yesterday or the day before, the NCAA is talking about, states cannot pass laws that allow them to circumvent NIL rules. We'll see how that goes.
Yes. All right. So before we close out this segment, football transfer portal news. The NCAA Division I Council proposed changes to the transfer period windows that would reduce the total days a student athlete can transfer from 60 down to 30. As it stands now, there's a transfer window in college football that starts the day after the college football playoff teams are announced. And then it's open for 45 days. And then there's another transfer window that's open in the spring from April 15th to April 30th. For winter sports, there's a 60-day window. The transfer windows were created this past year to limit time frame that an athlete can transfer. Undergraduate student athletes must enter their name in the transfer portal during the window to be granted immediately eligibility. Last year, folks, a total of 2,224 Division I football players entered their names in the portal, and 1,373 entering in the spring. With the proposal, the Oversight Committee and the Division I Student Athlete Advisory Committee, that's SAC, and Will, those are the students who are supposed to advocate, and they need a place at the table, will gather additional feedback and offer possible amendments this summer. Then the council will consider a final vote during its October meeting. Thoughts on Gen Pop. So Will, you're regular folk. What are your thoughts on the transfer portal, man?
I like the transfer portal. Just like any other student who goes to university who's like, hey, if this university is not working for me, or I need to go to a different school for whatever reason, they have the opportunity to do that. I don't see why athletes should get the same opportunity. But I think the things to kind of, because the money that's going in the same time, because let's not be stupid and say that, money is not involved in this. There should be some regulations. So that time, cutting down the 60 to 30 days and, the data that they're actually getting. So, I'm not against it. I think there should definitely be some policy around there to protect the players and protect the colleges. It's going to be the new era. So I'm glad that they're getting a wrangle on it now, and they're doing a lot better they did with NIL. So let's try and figure that on their end.
All right, Mike, Gen Pop, what does the band think about the transfer portal?
Transfer portal is kind of, lets the rich get richer. I mean, that's what just when Alabama's using the transfer portal, what's the point? It just becomes silly. It would be one thing if it's like, well, from the perspective of the student, like there were times where people legitimately needed to transfer sick family, blah, 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 and they were no. Like, I mean, that was just ridiculous. Now it's become like Alabama's like, our third cornerback's not good enough. I'll only take the starter from this school. And then it's like, come on. Can't we find the middle ground between those two? Like, why do we have to just be, it's so stupidly non-existent, or it's so stupidly prevalent, and just find common sense.
But I have a question. Are there limits on the roster size in college football? I know public.
Yes,
They
I believe
public-
rosters are 85. I believe that's the number.
That's not a roster size. That's a scholarship.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well,
okay.
That's why we have our administrator there.
You could have a team of Rudies. That's fine. That doesn't count.
Yeah, okay.
I love it. Robert, you have the last word of this segment, sir. What are we to make of all of this changes potentially with the transfer portal window?
I can't remember if it was Seinfeld or who it was talking about rooting for a team. You know, you're rooting for laundry anymore because everybody just changes teams all the time. So either you're rooting for a particular player or you're rooting for laundry. And I agree with the sentiment, you know, the rich get richer because that's what's been happening. I like the idea of there being some limitations on the amount of time that people can transfer. I think it's just a matter of time before somebody takes that to court as well, though.
Yes, there was a proposal out there in terms of just talking back and forth about spring games and why can't we have a spring game between, you know, Penn State and, you know, one AA team or whatever they call it. And they said, because if the one AA player plays well, he's going to leave Penn State. So, no, we're not going to do that. But anyway, thank you, gentlemen. When we get back in segment 3, we're going to go back to gambling. We started talking about gambling in segment 1 of our Tuesday show. We're going to close talking about gambling in segment 3 in terms of college. We'll be right back on the iCoaches podcast.
Why should student athletes use the CKA SAVE Project academic and athletic consulting services? Over the past 15 to 20 years, colleges, universities, professional sports teams, business organizations, and others have increased their use of consulting services to improve their decision-making processes and results. Over the same time, the athletic and academic landscape has changed for high school and college student athletes as the NCAA has raised initial academic eligibility requirements for student athletes while decreasing the number of transfer restrictions. Former college student athletes have noted that they were academic and athletically unprepared for the rigors of college. Let the CKA SAVE Project's close to 30 years of academic and athletic experience help guide student athletes to increase success as we work to help student athletes achieve the goal of obtaining a college degree. For more information, contact Dr. Keith Adams by email at cka@ckasaveproject.org.
Welcome back to the Coaches Podcast in segment 3. Got to talk about the updated gambling penalties from the NCAA. So the NCAA is amending its penalties for student athletes who violate NCAA's gambling policies. They're increasing leniency and in some cases basing punishments on the amount wagered. The Division I Legislative Committee last week ratified guidelines for reinstating student athletes who violate sports betting rules. The NCAA has announced betting by student athletes on any sport offered by the NCAA is prohibited, and in the past resulted in a loss of eligibility. The new guidelines are as follows. Student athletes found to have engaged in activities to influence the outcome of games they're involved in or provided information to individuals involved in betting will face a potential permanent loss of college eligibility. The guideline applies to student athletes who bet on their own games or on other sports at their own schools. Student athletes who bet on their own sport but not involving their school are subject to a potential 50% loss of one season. For all other wagering related violations, the cumulative dollar value of the wages will be taken into consideration when determining the punishment. Bets totaling $201 to $500, for example, could result in a loss of 10% of eligibility in terms of the season. plus rules and prevention education. Bets totaling more than 800 could result in a loss of 30% of a season of eligibility, plus rules and preventative education. As mentioned before, fans, 38 states, including the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, have passed sports betting legislation. In May, more than 40 student athletes at the University of Iowa and Iowa State were found to violate sports betting rules. Alabama baseball coach was fired in May after being linked to suspicious betting activity. Gentlemen, and we're going to start with Mike. What are your thoughts? Schools like pro teams are making money off gambling. So why can't student athletes? Mike, talk to me.
We live in a weird time where all these things that were illegal are now legal, but they're illegal in some places and not others. And like where we work, we just got an email this weekend saying there's a new Maryland law that allows for drugs, but not for you.
Marijuana, don't say drugs, marijuana.
But they had to say, like, you can't do that in where you work. And it's like, I mean, obviously, right? But I guess it's not obvious for everyone. Betting on, for college students, betting on sports, it's weird now because it used to be like there was no pay, there was no NIL. So if you were betting, you were probably like losing on purpose to help. It wasn't really betting. It was like that. That's how it was. There's like a more of a negative connotation to it. But I guess I got to feel the same way I do about the NFL, which is if you're picking your team to win, who cares if it's legal? When you have a system that says if you bet this much, it's 10%, this much, it's 20%, that's not a system. But to me, that it's so convoluted. It's all or nothing to me. If it's wrong or it's not wrong, and if it's wrong, then it's wrong. You did it, it's wrong. You bet $1, it should be the same. It doesn't. You bet $1 million. That why does the amount of bet matter if we're saying the betting's wrong? So it should just be you bet. If we want to make this a rule, if that's what they want to do, you bet. Season's over. Done.
Yep.
All right, Will, your time, sir. What do you think, sir?
Betting is just becoming a very strange kind of things for people, which is crazy because I've been gambling since I was in college, man. I used to go to the off-track
Just do it on your
betting.
phone now.
Yeah, now you can do it. Yeah, I used to go to the off-track betting, man. You have to meet with a guy and you tell him what you're doing. Now it's I understand what they're doing. You know, the integrity of the game. Obviously the student athletes are a lot more susceptible to other students. You know, there may be a kid who's like, hey man, this kid, put $300 on the quarterback. Oh, I'm gonna get him drunk. Come to the party. Let's do that. Let's set thing. I think there's a lot of things that can be influenced on the game. And I think people just need to understand, like, man, look, I'd give an example. I mean, look, if I knew a quarterback and I knew he likes to drink and I knew there was a big game coming in and I was like, man, I wonder if I can get a bet on him. Let me see if we can get him hung over on Friday. See if he's playing terrible on Saturday. Let me see if he plays and maybe doesn't have the 3 touchdowns and I can make $10,000, whatever. Those are real. Those are real, like class. Those are real ideas of really things that people are thinking about. And I think, especially now if you have athletes who are going to do that, if I know about, hey man, I know so and so doing this, take this, take this down, take this line. It messes up a lot of the integrity. Even if underlying, like Mike said, they're going to do what they're going to do, and if you're betting on your own team, that's fine. But there's that integrity part that people are always going to look at it and be like, because no matter how legal it is, people say, bet, and all of a sudden people will hear the word bet and they'll be like, oh man, like it's a very funny thing. And like Mike said, it's very new. So now a lot of things people are trying to catch up because, again, like we said, with NIL and everything else they should have done, they should have already come up ahead with a policy ahead of time so that when this happens, then it's not a big like, oh, well, this is a shock or this is because now they're catching up. And like Mike said, these are terrible, like $201 to $500. So if I just bet $200, I'm good. And I can save $1, save 30% of my season eligibility. I mean, what are we doing here? What are we doing? So again, this is, we're trying to catch up the end, and instead of we're not getting in front of the issues, and we're trying to rules on the back end to kind of save our face, but it gets a lot of people in trouble. It's going to have a lot of lawsuits, and it's going to get very, very difficult because the rules don't make sense.
Robert Savas, tell me what you think, sir.
Reactive instead of proactive. Indeed. This is, I mean, again, unintended consequences. When you open up that Pandora's box, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, to me, it's really just a matter of time before we have, and I mean, I'm going way back, like into the, was it the 50s or something like that? Long Island University point shaving scandal and basketball.
Yes.
It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time before something like that happens again. Because that's, and I'm not saying that gambling shouldn't be legal. I mean, you're a grown up and you want to gamble, have at it. But as a society, this is where we are, and there are going to be consequences down the road for this.
Yes. So as we close, fans, I want to wish NIL a very happy birthday. NIL was adopted by the NCAA this month in 2021 because the association's rules had been trumped by a bunch of state laws. Those laws have only become stronger. So the CKA Save Project, Dr. Keith Adams, does not feel bad for these folks. The NCAA created this monster, ignoring a lot of chances over the years that could have helped student athletes be fairly compensated. And historically speaking, especially after the last week we've been through, when you don't pay attention to history, things end up happening that a lot of people don't like, and then they get mad about it on the back end. That's about as deep as I'll go. Coaches keep whining about poaching and inducements and cheating, but they never name names. So again, I don't particularly care about that piece. So we're talking about court cases, and there's several court cases that could come out in the next few years that could really hurt the NCAA. And we also have current laws and a lot of SEC states, barring NCAA intervention, as Robert has mentioned. Missouri in particular, their NIL bill is becoming the template for other states to follow. And SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey has said, quote, if congressional help doesn't come, his league may go state to state attempting to persuade legislators to change their laws. It's a lot to digest. But as we close, Mike, happy birthday to NIL. Any final thoughts on it before we wrap up this week?
When NIL started, at the beginning of its birthday, I thought, oh, this, if it's I guess it's birthday. I thought this is great because a middle of the pack school like the one I root for could catch up if you were smart and you collected all this money and it's legal and just win. But then what ended up happening, not surprisingly, is if you didn't get the head start, you were already behind the 8 ball. And then all the teams that didn't need the help, they were like, oh, we could be even better. Now it's not unwatchable. It's still watch college sports. It's still fun. It's going to be something where it was already rare for an Alabama, Clemson, Georgia to not win, and now to just be impossible. It's going to be one of, like, every year for right now, you could draft 5 college football teams and be 100% sure they will be one of those 5 will win the next 10 championships. That's what NIL is going to do. For basketball, maybe not as much, but I think that once it hits, we're going to start to figure out who the basketball NIL schools are, and it'll start to look more like that. So that's kind of sad.
Will, NIL, sir, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, NIL. I think the one thing that I employ the NCAA is you didn't get ahead with NIL. You didn't get ahead with gambling. Try and get ahead with AI, because right now that's going to be integrated into the sports arena and you're not going to be able to handle it And you're going to be on the back end of things, creating policy that are creating more frustrations for people than really allowing people work moving forward. So employer, take heed, move forward, work on your AI policy right now, because in the next 3 to 5 years, you'll need it. So I'll work with you if you want that. Take my email down, but start working on it now.
All right. And Robert, any
Preach.
final thoughts as we say happy birthday to NIL?
Preach, Will. That's the truth, man. Yeah, they just, excuse me, there's been a whole lot of, they've just been behind the 8 ball on everything. And I think, I mean, that's just the NCAA. That's the way they've always operated, I guess. And it wouldn't shock me if, 5 years down the road, we're talking about, you've got, SEC, Big Ten over here doing their own thing, and then everybody else over here. That wouldn't shock me at all. It's a brave new world, man. I still love watching the games. That's never going to change, but I tend to agree with you guys that, for the foreseeable future, the playoff is going to be Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, and somebody
Not
else.
Clemson.
Somebody
Did you
else.
see that ACC check? Whoa, be Clemson. It'll be UCF before.
Hey,
Sorry about that. That
USC
Big 12 money versus ACC money. It's not even.
no, that's a good point. But I mean, that's what you're looking at. I mean, okay, so take Clemson out, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, and somebody
Now
else.
add those California schools now add USC, add UCLA, because they're now traveling to the East Coast. And if you don't think when USC comes to Maryland to play to play an away game, if they're not hanging out at the various schools, you're crazy. So on behalf of my tag team partner and our cavalcade of stars, this was fun. I am Dr. Keith Adams saying thank you for listening and or watching the Odd Coaches podcast, and we will see you on the sidelines. Till next time, take care.
The Odd Coaches podcast is sponsored by the CKA Save Project. The CKA Save Project is an industry leader in providing student-athlete academic and athletic support. From assessing student-athletes' academic and athletic skills, to measuring and monitoring student-athlete academic progress, to improving student-athlete time management and organizational skills, the CKA Save Project provides wraparound services for student-athletes from middle school through college. For more information, visit us on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org or schedule a free consultation with Dr. Keith Adams by emailing cka@ckasaveproject.org. We hope you enjoyed today's show. The Odd Coaches podcast drops new episodes every Tuesday through Friday on most weeks. Make sure you subscribe to the Odd Coaches podcast on Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow the Odd Coaches podcast on Twitter and Instagram at Odd Coaches. Follow Dr. Adams on Twitter and Instagram at CKA Save Project. In addition, follow Coach Mike Francis on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Franchise, spelled Coach FRANCHIZE. For more information about the CKA Save Project, please visit them on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org. See you next time on the Odd Coaches Podcast.